So old Philip Spencer went out and did an interview with Bloomberg that dropped today, and there's a lot of interesting shit in this interview that I want to go over with you all here today. So let's dive into this article real quick, and we'll pick it apart bit by bit. So, once again, coming from Bloomberg, after a tough year, Microsoft Corp's video game chief is still looking at acquisitions and charting how to compete and partner in the markets for handheld games, devices, and mobile stores. Deals that add geographic diversity, including Asia, might be worthwhile, Phil Spencer said in an interview Tuesday at Bloomberg's offices in New York. Buying another mobile company would add to titles Microsoft picked up in its $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard last year. He said, "We definitely want to be in the market, and we can find teams and technology and capability that adds to what we're trying to do in gaming at Microsoft. Absolutely, we will keep our heads up," Spencer said. Still, there's nothing imminent, and large deals are probably off the table at present as the company is spending a lot of time absorbing Activision Blizzard employees, he said. Microsoft wants to diversify the teams working on games by looking more to China, he said. So, interesting. You look at Hi-Fi Rush, you look at Tango Gameworks, you look at that being one of the best games that came out in 2023, and less than a year later, the studio gets shut down by Microsoft and ends up, thankfully, being sold to Krafton. Krafton ended up acquiring Tango Gameworks, restoring some life into that studio, allowing them to go on and work on Hi-Fi Rush 2 as they acquired the rights to Hi-Fi Rush 2, or to Hi-Fi Rush in general, to the IP. But I don't know other, Asian studios out there, are they looking at that situation and being like, damn, so you can release one of the best games of the year, and if it doesn't meet expectations, which we don't really even know what the expectations are because it's such a weird business model where it's like, how much are sales factored in versus Game Pass downloads versus, like, there's so many different moving parts to the Xbox business, and with such a unsure with such unsure longevity, you release one of the best games of the year and you end up getting closed down. And I don't know, I just look at it where you have to see potential as well. I don't think everything can necessarily be X's and O's. Everything can be profit margins, this, that, and the other. When you have somebody who releases a game like Hi-Fi Rush that is that good, I think you have to be able to see the potential that their future games could be even better. You know what I mean? I look at Team Asobi over at PlayStation. Like, profit margin-wise, I would assume that this year's Astrobot was the first game they've ever released that was profitable. And they've been around for over a decade. But they've always made really good games. You know what I mean? They just weren't big hits. And a lot of that is because of the platform that they were tied to, with most of them being VR dependent. But, I think that you can see a team's creative capability and go, well, if we could stretch that beyond where they're currently existing, then they could probably go on to have great success. And I think that it, at least in my opinion, I would assume it would probably be worrying to a lot of other Chinese developers, Korean developers, Japanese developers looking at that situation and being like, damn, I don't know if will they kick us to the curb as soon as we put out one game that meets critical expectation but slightly falls short of commercial expectation? Like, I don't know. That's just that doesn't necessarily bode. I don't think that would necessarily bode well in terms of providing confidence to the studios that you're looking to acquire. But I do think in terms of the strategy of, looking towards China to expand into a global market, looking towards Korea to expand in a global market, I think that when you see the success of Black Myth Wukong, when you see the success of Stellar Blade, when you see the success of, I assume, next year with Crimson Desert, I think that thing's going to be a huge hit. You have to assume that is going to be the next big boom for console gaming. where we're going to see software coming out of these spaces, and that's probably going to be the big growth market next for console gaming, and it's already a huge growth market for mobile gaming. So in terms of business strategy, I do think it's wise to invest there. Do I think it's necessarily wise for the Asian studios out there to partner with Microsoft and with Xbox with their lack of commitment so far? I would say probably not, but once again, smart business play for them to be looking in to be looking to expand towards China and Korea. I do find it interesting, this bit here about looking for smaller acquisition targets. And I wonder if Private Division would fall into that realm of smaller acquisition targets. Take-Two recently sold off Private Division, and we know that they've had a relationship with Private Division games coming to Game Pass, stuff like Rollerdrome, and I think even Ollie Ollie World was on Game Pass at some point. And obviously the Outer Worlds was published by Private Division. The first Outer Worlds was published by Private Division before Obsidian was acquired by Microsoft. But so I was wondering, maybe Private Division could be purchased by Microsoft. I know whenever the craziness was going on with Ubisoft, I was thinking, I think that Ubisoft would make some sense for an acquisition target for Microsoft. And maybe there was a part of me just like hopefully or hopeful that Microsoft would swoop in, or someone else would swoop in, so that they wouldn't be under the Tencent thumb if that was the only other alternative. But yeah, definitely Ubisoft does not look like it's going to be a target at all. Way, way, way too big, and probably a good decision overall. That's just way too much going on for Microsoft to have any possible chance of realistically managing. And he also spoke about the handheld market. The executive, who has repeatedly professed his admiration for handheld gaming devices, said the expectation is that we would do something in that category. Although the company is working on prototypes and considering what it might do, Spencer also asked his group to look at the market and develop its vision based on what it learns. Such a device is a few years out, he said. In the coming months, designers and engineers will focus on making the Xbox app work better on existing portable devices and partnering with hardware makers to make sure their products sync with Xbox games and experiences. The Xbox app right now is good rather than great on some of these gadgets. Long term, I love us building devices, Spencer said, and I think our team could do some real innovative work, but he wants to be informed by learning and what's happening now. So, the handheld market, I think that the few years out statement, I don't love that. I was kind of hoping that the Xbox handheld would launch before the next Xbox console, just to breathe a little more life into the Xbox ecosystem. But I would assume that this few years out, I would assume that that means 2028, the new console will launch and the handheld will launch alongside it. With that, though, I think you see wavering commitment to the Xbox brand as a whole, and we'll get into that in a little bit here. It kind of does make you worry, where you're not so focused on the growing the Xbox business and trying to expand outside of it to grow different business, different kind of adjacent markets that benefit, or could benefit, hopefully benefit the Xbox business. But it's like, if hardware sales continue to decline, do you remain committed to the Xbox console market? And alongside that, would you be committed to an Xbox handheld device if those hardware numbers continue to decline, which I think we have all the reason in the world to believe they will continue to decline, as we'll get to it in a second when he talks about exclusive games. So yeah, I mean, the idea of a handheld device for Xbox, I fucking love. I think that would be a great business move. But I kind of feel that the only way Xbox is going to remain in the hardware business at all is if they innovate pretty quickly. And maybe that is 2028. 2028 is kind of right around the corner at this point. And if they have something in place where it is like a Steam Deck, or a hybrid version where you have an actual console, a high-powered console, but you also have a high-powered handheld, and it's somewhat of an open market, and you can go in and access your Steam library, your Epic library, and all of your digital downloads from PC, and also be able to play console, Game Pass on the console, Xbox games on the console, and maybe even have more open possibilities for emulation for certain older games. And I think that is really the way that Xbox makes a huge mark and remains relevant in the hardware business. So, but once again, I think we all see wavering commitment to that market, and that should probably be worrying to some degree to know that the handheld is a few years out, and they're already kind of wavering on their commitment to making Xbox like the premier place to go and play games when they're releasing so many of their games elsewhere, which we'll go ahead and move on to that right now. So in regards to, this multi-platform approach, the article goes on to say, after releasing the first batch of Xbox games for Sony Group Corp's PlayStation and Nintendo's Switch, Spencer's pleased with the results. Microsoft will do more of that, he said, and won't rule out any game in Microsoft's stable. I do not see sort of red lines in our portfolio that say thou must not, he said. It's too early to make any sort of decision on the next version of Halo, though. So, once again, talking about devaluing the Xbox base, devaluing that console, this is prime fucking evidence of that. Where nothing is off the table and anything could be a game that potentially sees itself on a PlayStation or a Switch 2. And it's just such a bummer to me because, for one, I've talked about it 100 times. I think you need Xbox in the console market to ensure that healthy competition is better for consumers just in general. You know what I mean? I think that the less competition we have in this space, the more shady the power players can be. And I think that when you're looking at the lineup of Xbox games over the next, even just the next year, with Doom and Fable and South of Midnight and so many games on the horizon for first-party Xbox releases, and we know Doom is going to PS5 day one, but like, now this, you see South of Midnight, the previews just came out, and the game looks amazing. But now the number one question on everybody's mind because of interviews like this is going to be, when's it coming to PlayStation 5? When's it coming to Switch 2? And if you are already bought in with a PS5, or if you plan on buying in with a Switch 2, even if the game is not currently announced for Xbox, if you're in the know and if you've been following what Phil Spencer has been constantly saying over the last couple years, which is a lot different than what he was saying like 4 years ago, which we ain't even got to get into all that, the flip-flopping, but if you are already bought in with PlayStation or plan to buy in with the Switch or the Switch 2, what would make you buy an Xbox? Even if South of Midnight currently isn't announced to be coming to Switch 2 or PlayStation 5, him constantly planting these seeds makes you go, yeah, well, I guess that it'll probably, when it comes out, and I think that game's going to review gangbusters. I think it'll probably be like 8.5 or higher. Like, that game looks great. And people are going to be eager to jump in, but how eager? You know what I mean? Like, will their base assumption just be, it'll probably come to the console I already own at some point, and will they just wait it out? And like, I don't think that's really the business that you want to be in, of having people just be like, yeah, I don't need an Xbox to play this. It'll come out to one of the platforms I already own, and it'll come out day one on PC, so the people who are playing on PC will be able to play it there day one. Which I don't think that's as big of a problem, but differentiating yourself in the console market, like the console consumer wants a specific experience, and I think that you have the goods. And that's the thing that bums me out so much is like, if Microsoft, and I understand it's a business, but like if Microsoft could have just given Xbox a little bit more time, a little bit more time to roll these games out, because the games are coming now. The games are on the way. You know what I mean? We're getting constant good releases from Xbox first party. But now we have all these fucking questions surrounding the games. And even you look at Fable coming out next year. Whenever you say a statement like, there's no, thou shall not release this game because it's a premier title. Like, if you say that there's no red line, that anything can come over, that you're even considering Halo. Fable, I mean, you then have to ask that question about Fable as well. That's supposed to come out in 2025. So it's like, you're making it so hard for people to want to buy this system. And I know that we get into this weird, and I could go on for years about this, just this weird idea that people think exclusives no longer sell systems. It's like, oh man. So the Switch is going to be the best-selling console of all time, and Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, and then Mario Kart and Smash, and these games have nothing to do with that? Okay. Some of the best first-party exclusive releases in any console's life cycle ever was for the Switch. The result is that it ends up being the best, or is going to end up being the best-selling console of all time, most likely. The exclusive lineup has nothing to do with that? Okay. Sure. But yeah, I feel like I could talk until I'm blue in the face about this. This just bums me out. This just really, really bums me out. I still believe that exclusives are primarily the number one thing that people are going to buy a console for. I think you have to have exclusives if you're going to have a console. I don't think we're at that point. Because, I mean, if you want to take the PC route, then wouldn't, you if you want to take that route, then you have to be committed to that path. You know what I mean? Like, if you want if the next Xbox is going to be more of this PC hybrid machine, then you better get to it. You know what I mean? Like, you probably want to get that thing out sooner rather than later. While there's still some relevancy within this brand. Because I do think if you put that out, if you put this hybrid machine out, and we can have a simplified version of a PC, if we could essentially have the features of a PC, but just a plug-and-play console, like, dude, that would be very fucking appealing. But if that's the commitment that you're making, you probably want to get to it pretty quickly. 2028, it's not a long ways away, but shit, man, a lot can change in the next 3 years. And if you're consistently devaluing the brand of Xbox, like, sure, this PC hybrid, as cool as it sounds, will you be able to get people in the door just with that pitch? If people are losing more and more faith in, because we've talked about it many times on the channel, the optical hurdle. If there's this optical problem where people view Xbox as lesser than, and the value continues to degrade from now to 2028, you would have to be offering something really fucking cool to make people, to get people to buy in. And I hope that they are. I really hope that they are. I like that idea of that hybrid machine. And I hope that that's what they end up offering up. But, it's hard to be confident in their strategy at all right now, because it's been so all over the place for so long. And once again, that's the bummer, because the games are actually good. I feel like if the strategy was just as it was from the get-go, you buy an Xbox to play games that are exclusive to Xbox. Well, now would be the time where you would have the exclusive games. But I guess it just took a little bit too long for Microsoft's liking. They saw that Call of Duty success, they saw that Call of Duty money, that Diablo money, and they were like, shit, can we make that on all of our first-party games? And the answer is going to be a resounding no. Abso-fucking-lutely not. But hey. All right. And next up, we have two more things that I want to hit on real quick here. So the article goes on to read, following the Activision acquisition, Xbox cut more than 2,500 jobs and closed 3 game design studios, with the company exiting what management calls a difficult year amid a challenging mobile game market. Spencer feels good about 2025. The Xbox, Phil Spencer says, the Xbox business has never been more healthy, citing growth in cloud and PC gaming as well as console usage. The business is performing right now, and I think that means a more healthy future for hardware and the games we build. So, yeah, I mean, I think that releasing Call of Duty, that in and of itself is going to put your business in the healthiest spot it's ever been, because before this you never was able to release a first-party Call of Duty game. And so seeing the success of a game of that ilk, I'm sure, I mean, that's an individual game that can carry an entire company. You know what I mean? And I mean, to be fair, Xbox has, what was it, like $20 billion franchises? Like 20 individual franchises that have grossed over $1 billion in lifetime sales. And sure, some of those are still sitting around dormant. You have your Tony Hawks and your Crashes and your Spyro. Well, I don't think Spyro ever grossed $1 billion. But you have Guitar Heroes, some of those franchises that are dormant. I do think a lot of those will be revived. I definitely think Tony Hawk will come back. I think Crash will have a legit game, Crash 5, or a spin-off game that's like a legitimate Crash video game. I think that you can definitely look at the Xbox business as a publisher and go, they're in the best spot they've ever been, without a doubt. You know what I mean? They're probably the biggest publisher in the world at this point. And over time, I think they'll go on to be the most profitable publisher in the world. Obviously, they have to recoup that $69 billion acquisition, but I mean, they have humongous franchises, and I have no doubt in the world that they'll remain relevant as a publisher forever. I mean, like I said, Call of Duty alone will ensure that they remain relevant as a publisher. You know what I mean? That franchise is going to continue being a world beater every single year. So, and I think that they have smart plans with Halo spinoffs, and I mean, the success of the Fallout TV show, if they continue to look in the direction of spinoffs there, I think there's a lot of potential, a lot of opportunity there. Like I said, I think they have huge games on the horizon. I think Clockwork Revolution has the potential to be like a game of the generation contender. You know what I mean? I think a studio expanding, a studio like In Exile, going from what they were to making a game that keeps intact a lot of that choice, a lot of that agency, but like a first-person shooter in terms of the gameplay format, I think that's so appealing. And so I do think as a third-party publisher, they're a juggernaut, no doubt. So their business being healthier than it's ever been, I definitely would believe that. You know, you saw Sea of Thieves' success on PlayStation as one of the best-selling games on PlayStation for like multiple months in a row. So they're making a fucking ton of money. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. If they roll that money in to continue releasing hardware, I'll be happy and maybe even a little bit surprised. I mean, I do think that Xbox will release hardware in 2028, but like I don't say that with a ton of confidence. I think I'd be like 60-40, 70-30 on that prediction. Like 70% of me says yes, they will release hardware in 2028. But we could keep on going in circles about this. But yeah, as a publisher, I do think they are I do think it's probably the healthiest business that they've ever had. I mean, it's definitely not the healthiest their hardware sales have ever been. It's definitely not the Xbox ecosystem in terms of the console market. I wouldn't say it's healthy at all. But as a publisher, there's no fucking doubt they're a juggernaut, the biggest in the world. All right, and following up, the final thing I want to talk about here is, he said, I feel pretty good about where this industry is going. He said, to reach new players, we need to be creative and adaptive of new business models, new devices, new ways of access. We're not going to grow the market with $1,000 consoles. And I totally 1000% agree that you're not going to grow the market with $1,000 consoles. And I think he's spot on with this. If you're looking to have 100 million people buy your console, you're not going to be able to get those 100 million people selling a $1,000 system. It's just not going to happen. And you do need 100 million people in your ecosystem to ensure that these humongous $300 million games can be profitable. You know what I mean? Like, you have to have... You have to be shooting your shot where you have the potential of 100 million buyers. And of course, you're not going to have that attach rate. But if you can get 20 million people in the door, 30 million people in the door, you need to be shooting for those numbers. You know what I mean? And the only way to do that is to put out a device, to put out hardware that 100 million people can feasibly purchase. Can look at the price and go, yeah, I can squeeze that. 100 million people, there's not 100 million people you can sell a $1,000 device to. It's just, you know what I mean? Or I should say, there's not 100 million people that you can sell a $1,000 console to. You can sell a $1,000 device. People do it nonstop for their iPhones, but it's, people look at their phone as a necessity, and rightfully so. People don't look at video games and entertainment in that light. So yeah, once again, just agree with this 100% across the board. I think if we see the PS6 launch at $1,000, no chance it sells 100 million units. No chance it sells PS2 or PS4 numbers or anything like that. So yeah, smart play to not be pushing towards those $1,000 consoles. But yeah, that's pretty much the entire article there. Some mobile stuff that I skipped over a little bit and some other shit. But that's the main crux of the conversation, the big talking points that I found interesting. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about all this. I at times just wish Phil Spencer wouldn't do these interviews, because I think he actively does harm to the Xbox brand. The more he speaks about seemingly not giving a shit about the Xbox brand or the actual Xbox console. But hey, interesting to look at, interesting to dissect. I hope that they have some commitment to exclusivity, but it doesn't seem like that's really going to be the case. So we'll see, man. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments down below. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Goodbye.